Good evening and welcome to the COVID-19 recovery, listening to our community public forums. I'm Jennifer Kirkham and I'll be facilitating tonight's session. The City of Brantford recognizes that the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in severe and unprecedented challenges in the lives of our community members, including but not limited to challenges concerning physical health, mental health, finances, and spirituality. Tonight, we're holding our final public forum on spiritual support. Our goal is to gain a better understanding of the specific supports needed to help our community endure and recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the last 2 weeks, we have shared information about how community members can participate in these virtual public forums, including registering in advance to speak live, submitting feedback through the Brantford Let's Talk webpage, and watching the live streams on the City of Brantford's YouTube channel. At the conclusion of these 4 public forums, our next steps will be to report your ideas, concerns, and questions back to City Council in order to advocate on behalf of our community to the provincial and federal levels of government. We will also provide a summary of this information to the community. City staff are joining me tonight and will be capturing the comments and questions from our speakers. The City of Brantford welcomes open and honest communication. However, we uphold zero tolerance for hate speech, profanity, and other inappropriate language and conduct. Participants who engage in these behaviors will be removed from the meeting. Examples of inappropriate language and conduct include verbal assaults, threats and attempts to intimidate, attempts to goad or incite violence in others, and racial, ethnic, religious, sexual, or gendered insults and slurs. As I said, our topic for tonight is spiritual support, and the following questions were developed to help guide our discussion on this topic. What did we do well as a community to support each other during the COVID-19 pandemic? What are the needs of the Brantford community as we move forward? And what can the municipal, provincial, and federal governments do to support pandemic recovery? I have a list of registered speakers for tonight's public forum, and I will call on you when it is your time to speak. We have right now 3 speakers in the queue, so you understand what order you'll be in. I'm going to start with Cameron, and second to speak will be Paul, and third will be Terry. You will have up to 10 minutes to speak. If you're getting close to that mark, I'll give you a bit of a 1-minute warning. And I'm getting ready to start then. So let's start by welcoming Cameron.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Cameron Payne. I pastor Lighthouse Baptist Church here in the city. And I'm so glad that we have the opportunity to have this forum on spiritual matters. I think, everybody has turned to, well, not everybody, but a lot of people have turned to certain things, whether it be family or friends, which we, via Zoom and stuff like that. But a lot of people that I know personally, and I know in the city, and not just my church, they've suffered because of the guidelines that the government has placed down for churches to meet. First of all, we lost I believe we lost our right to meet. Now, I understand with the pandemic restrictions and stuff, but if we keep unnecessary stores open, we should have churches open. Now, one of the things that I ran into a roadblock here in the city was we wanted to have a public, just at a park, where we can invite churches, whoever. We wanted to invite our mayor because we are our city's nickname is the city of churches. But when you go on the city website, the hoops that you need to jump through to get a permit. Now, we could have done it without a permit, and like most other people have done, but we believe that everything needs to be done decently and in order and in the right way. I think the city needed to make it easier for churches to have, 20 or, so people. Our church does not own a building. We rent a facility, but during the pandemic, they were also under lockdown, so where we couldn't rent. Um, I think that could have been done better. As for what can municipal, provincial, and federal governments do to support pandemic recovery, allow churches to be open, allow addiction services. We run an addiction service in our church, and we couldn't meet one-on-one with people. We were told we could not, and so we obeyed. We did on Zoom and stuff and FaceTime, but it just does not meet the same personal touch. Our city, I believe we failed. Our province and our country and our city has failed people's spiritual needs. And I think we need to do better. I think the city needs to allow a little leeway for churches who don't have a building. And there's several of us out here that don't have a building and don't have a parking lot big enough to allow us to have a park service where we can have a little more people. I know our restrictions are hopefully going to be lifted in the next few weeks to allow a little more, but we need that, and I think our city needs to listen. And I'm all for some of the restrictions. I'm all for getting vaccinated and all that other stuff, but I think as I said, our churches need to be able to meet. If we want to be serious about a spiritual helping, we need to look at ways to make it easier for churches to meet outdoors and be social distance. Thank you that's all I have to say, and thank you for my time.
Great, thanks for joining us tonight, Cameron. Well, we had another speaker join us, so just in terms of order, next up to speak will be Paul, followed by Terry, and then we'll finish with Deborah. So welcome, Paul.
There we go. Couldn't find the unmute. So thank you for hosting the event and allowing us to chat. So my name is Paul Shepard. I'm the minister at Sydenham Heritage United Church here in Brantford. And when I think about, I want to focus more on how we can move forward, I guess. And to me, spirituality, I'm not even sure what you're expecting us to talk about. It's a pretty broad word, but to me, spirituality at its core has to do with our connections with the divine and connections with each other. And so one of the biggest problems with the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, if we're honest, is how many people are actually very isolated in the city. And I've been trying to figure out how to put that together with the fact that I know a lot of people who don't even eat well because they're living alone. They don't know how to cook, and they end up buying garbage food, which costs more anyway and is nutritiously lousy, and they're eating it on their own. So I've been trying to imagine some kind of a model, and this is more of a concept. I'm not saying all the details are figured out, where we'd find a way to help encourage people to actually come together, cook together, eat together, clean up together, kind of like extending the table as a family. And so partly this is for isolation, partly it's for so people can actually just eat better. So, I mean, we don't need anyone's permission to do this, of course, but I think it would be better to do this in public facilities. And I don't know how many public kitchens are in Brantford. My church has one that's good enough to use, for example, but there must be other ones. I just thought there'd be some way to organize so we could come together in smallish groups, 8 to 10 people or something, so we actually can build friendships and bonds, kind of like a family thing. I imagine like a 4-week blocks, and then we have some kind of rotation. The key to this is, because we have food programs in Brantford for sure, where one group of people cook, another group of people take the food and eat it. But that's, and I'm not disparaging those, but that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about where everyone gets to participate, because part of isolation is losing self-respect, and part of regaining self-respect comes from being a contributing member of society. So I see a model where everyone cooks, everyone cleans, kind of like how you might imagine a family works. Even to the point I think participants would pay for their own ingredients. When I think of how this would actually work practically in a way that would engage people, I can see that cooks would have specialties, either based on ethnic foods or cooking vegan or whatever that would be. So what we actually need is just access to public kitchens. And like I say, we have one in my church, but I would just make a case. It'd be nice if the city or somebody could actually pay to rent the space. And I know traditionally churches provide their facilities for free for these kinds of programs, but they're struggling to pay for buildings now too. So if there's some way to pay for that, and there are custodial costs if nothing else. The other thing we need is, do we have people who can teach people to cook? Before coming to Brantford, I was in Rexdale, part of Toronto, and Toronto was just getting to the point of having public programs where the city would pay for not just cooks, but people who could teach cooking. It's cheap, nutritious, everything about that. So I just don't know what's already available. Maybe something like this already exists, but just the idea that we can solve isolation and poor nutrition by actually working together and building community and building safe space for people. So yeah, so we need people who can teach cooking as well. I think that's the basic number of the issue. I can think of other ways to come together, but I just see food. I just cry, when somebody tells me they live off like frozen mac cheese. And I'm thinking, it costs more than making your own. It's nutritionally whatever. And they're eating it on their own, watching TV or something. So anyway, just in terms of spiritual needs, I think of isolation as one of the big things. And yes, this was pre-pandemic, but pandemic has made that worse, I think. So I don't know. I'd love to hear if some of these things are already happening. I hope what I said made some sense. But and I see ways for community to move forward as we eat together, share together. That can only be good for all of Brantford. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks for joining us tonight. Next on the speakers list, I have Terry. Welcome, Terry.
Well, thanks, Jennifer. Good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Terry, and I am the lead pastor of Pleasant Valley Church here in Brantford. And I acknowledge that there are many different expressions when it comes to addressing the spiritual dynamic within each one of us. And so my thoughts are from the Christian and Protestant church context. I'm just answering the questions on the screen in front of us. What did we do well as a community to support each other during the pandemic? For us as a church, we were able to move our services and our groups online to offer spiritual support. And where accessing the internet was a challenge, we produced DVDs of the service, and we were able to have people even call in and at least listen to the service if they weren't able to see it. As we began the first lockdown, we had folk go door to door in their neighborhood and personally, and sometimes with flyers, offer assistance and support to their neighbors. And as a church, we offered physical help, whether that was groceries or grocery pickups or medicine pickups. We strengthened our food bank partnerships. We also offered spiritual and mental help. So we offered prayer and encouragement over the phone or where possible in person if it could be safely done, and through the internet, whether it was through email or Zoom. We also prayed for our government leaders for wisdom, courage, and strength as they had to make difficult decisions. And as a church, we also supported other churches and other pastors in the city. We cared for the caregivers. The second question is, what are the needs of the Brantford community as we move forward? I see three primary needs. The three biggest needs in the Brantford community. Number one, I think, is for wholeness and healing. As a city, post-COVID, we are all in pain. We are all walking through the stages of grief. We all lost something. We are all grieving something. We're all broken. And some churches offer recovery programs that play a part in breaking addictions and helping with the healing process, whether it's with grief or guilt or unforgiveness or other types of brokenness. So the biggest need is for wholeness and healing. Secondly, the second need that I see in the Brantford community is for community, a real place and people of belonging. I think as soon as we get serious about anything, we join a club. Whether we join a doctor or a group, we join others. We have community, a sense of belonging. And what hurt us in COVID was the relational distance. Community is the help that we all need. The spiritual faith communities, they matter, and they help us to become better, stronger together. They pick us up when we're down, and as the song says, we all need somebody to lean on. So the biggest need, wholeness and healing. Secondly, community. Thirdly, hope. As a pastor, I am a dealer in hope. Hope that people can be changed. Hope that things can improve. Hope that we can get through what we're going through. Hope that the best is yet to come. And how do we develop hope? Well, I think part of that begins by celebrating and publicizing victories and improvements, recognizing the reality that we're not where we could be, we're not where we should be, but we're not where we were. And so we celebrate that, and that gives us hope in that we are experiencing progress together. So wholeness and healing, community, and hope. Third question is, what can the government do to support pandemic recovery? Just a few thoughts in that direction. I think the first one is continuing the ongoing recognition and acknowledgement of the spiritual element of each citizen. What we're doing tonight is a great starting place because it addresses the body, the mind, and the soul. So well done, and thank you, Brantford, for doing this. Secondly, I wonder if the government would be able to make available more meeting rental spaces for spiritual communities, especially as they use them to help others. Paul began to address that as he was speaking, or perhaps more affordable rental places for spiritual communities to use. A third possible way that the government can support pandemic recovery is through involving and inviting our spiritual or our faith communities to participate or facilitate smaller community events. For example, our church is involved in the local community gardens, and then we're going to be doing a back to school initiative. Most recently, we were involved in the Brantford food drive. A fourth way that the government on whatever level can help in supporting pandemic recovery, just as there is a directory for mental health. So if people have questions or are seeking next steps to take in addressing their mental health, perhaps if there was an additional directory for spiritual support options. And there are many, depending on which faith system people subscribe to, but a directory for spiritual support might be helpful. I think at a macro level, though, speaking on behalf of just our faith community, we don't really want something from the government. We want something for the community. We want to share the healing. We want to share the community, and we want to share the hope that we have. So thank you so much for simply acknowledging the spiritual element within humanity and within our city. And it's an honor to serve in such a great city. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thanks for joining us tonight. Our final speaker this evening is Deborah. Welcome, Deborah.
Thank you. I don't have a long speech. I am a student of Indigenous wellness and addiction prevention, and it is my hope that we journey into wellness as a community as well. And being Indigenous, fire means a lot to me, because I believe that we all start with as a spark, and sometimes our flame goes out, and we need to have that inspired and have it fed. So for our community, I would like to see like a sunrise ceremony, a community smudging, just to promote wellness, spiritual connecting, availability, land-based, not for one, but for all, because we all are in this community together. What did we do well as a community to support during the pandemic? Well, closed the doors for all the stores, except for the essential services, which was good. The mandatory shutdown, that was very appreciative. But it was also heartening for the people with no fixed address, as they were coming against the barriers of using the washing facilities, washing their hands, washing their face. So that was stress to me. And I myself doing outreach in our community, walking around for a couple of hours, and having to rush home to go use the washroom, I could feel their pain. What are the needs of Brantford community as we move forward? Like I said, I think that the apology for shutting down and having to shut down and having the washroom facilities and all that not available. But I think that the people with no fixed address would really like an apology. That's just me speaking for myself. We need good thanks to all the natural elements for what they provide. The grass, the sun, the winds, the rain. We need to be kind and compassionate. I think that we need to hire peer support workers, street outreach for the hard to reach people, and offer that voluntary work for people to contribute to our community because they are our community members, and having them do small tasks, I think would bring them as a sense of belonging. Supply people with no fixed address, sleeping bag, socks, storage like lockers like over at Earl Hague. What can the municipality, provincial or federal government do to support the pandemic recovery? Empathize with the people. I challenge, take your bank cards, all your electronic devices, your keys, put it all away for a day. And the next day, how did you manage? How did you manage to eat? How did you manage to have a drink? How did you navigate? Just to have a little bit of sympathy for our people. Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah, for your comments tonight. We do have some time, so are there any additional questions or comments that any of the speakers would like to make? If you would, you can raise your hand so I can see you. Deborah, go ahead.
I know that the churches provide the meals for the community members. They're really good meals. I've attended them myself. But I think that I don't know. I've seen the lineups too, right? That's all.
Thank you. Cameron, go ahead.
Sorry about that. I didn't unmute myself. One of our gentlemen made a good point of a list of churches and outreach programs and stuff. I think maybe on our city website, putting something like that, like different, like we have several different faiths, denominations represented tonight, but we also have we run an addictions program. I know one of the gentlemen, they said that they run a meal kitchen and stuff like that. I think that would help our city and the people of our city. I have pastoral friends of mine in the United States that their city, that's what they do. They they have that list for the city, and even the welcome, like when somebody moves to the city, when we moved to the city many years ago, we went to our town hall and wanted to get some information about clubs and stuff, and there was nothing available. That was 16 years ago. So maybe doing something like that would be a good thing. We need to move forward and past this. There's going to be a lot of mental stress. There already is, but I think that's going to be the second pandemic, is the mental stress and the depression of our city. And we have, I believe, the greatest city in the country, if not the world, and we need to take care of it.
Thanks, Cameron. Would anyone else like to add any further comments or questions? I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to wrap up. So I'd like to thank our speakers for joining us tonight and taking the time to share their ideas, concerns, and questions with us. If there's any other information that you would like to share, please visit the Let's Talk Brantford COVID-19 Recovery webpage to have your voice heard. As I mentioned when we started, all of the information shared with us will inform a series of reports back to Brantford City Council to support the ability of Council to advocate on the community's behalf to the provincial and federal governments. A summary of these reports will also be made available publicly. We'd also like to remind everyone of the health and social support services and resources that are available to you in your community, and you can see them on your screen right now. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us. This is the final of our 4 public forums. And as I said, keep your eyes on the city website if you're interested in seeing the reports that are generated from the public forums. So thanks for your time. Thank you, speakers, for joining us tonight.